Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Live, Talks with Dynamic Leaders. I'm Christine Tao. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Sounding Board, a dynamic leader development suite that provides coaching and mentoring solutions for employees. And I am thrilled to welcome Park Allen today to the series. Park and I have known each other now for quite some time, and I have seen how he's worked over a 30 plus career in people management and people leadership. And so Park is now the VP of people at the Four Corners Property Trust, but he spent that 30-year career in many types of companies all across various industries, including technology. So I am excited about the conversation that we're going to have today, particularly around his thoughts around how you can be a more empathetic and humane leader. So welcome, Park.
Thanks, Christine. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, one thing I always love to start this with is people want to know a little bit about you, Park, besides the amazing resume and experience that you've built, sort of what's led you to become who you are and led you down this field. So we always ask this question, what is your origin story?
I love this question because it gives insight into where the person comes from and kind of what, makes them tick. So, all the way back when I was in high school, I had a high school guidance counselor that for some reason took an interest in me and was the first person to ask, "What is it that you want to do when you grow up?" And I'll let you know when I get close to growing up, but uh, be that as it may, he pointed out that I was empathetic, that I saw that others needed to have someone listen to them and to ask questions rather than tell them what to do. And so he suggested that I become a peer counselor and started to ask questions about what I wanted to do, just topics that I had never considered. Um, Pairing that at the same time, I was a camp counselor for kids. And what I did was I led them to try to overcome their anxiety and to be creative and to participate. And while kids and adults, there's a great difference, there's also a lot of similarity. And so when I got into college and I started studying psychology, I realized I didn't want to be a therapist, but I wanted that to be an element of what I did on a day-to-day basis. And human resources or people is a great way to use both of those dynamic environments or experiences. And so providing advice and helping people overcome adversity and advocate for themselves while participating and being creative. It's just a great place for me to be. And through the years, I started my career in hotels, and then I went into healthcare, into nonprofits. I did some consulting in human resources across multiple industries, retail, et cetera. And then I went into technology. My most recent change is that I'm working for a property trust, a REIT. And so it's yet another new industry, but it's the same adventure. It's helping people to overcome what they're trying to deal with and to be able to express what they want, and so that manager and employee can come out together as great partners.
Well, one thing that sort of struck me in what you have just shared is that nowhere are you talking about, say, policies and procedures and compliance and things that, like, I would say historically, not modern HR, was associated with the people function. Is there anything you can say more about that?
Sure. I always think that like the Wizard of Oz behind the screen, policies and procedures are tricks that we can use or ways that we can create consistency. It's a way for us to be able to be consistent and fair, equitable, things like that. If you have a process, then you can improve it. That being said, is that people don't really care about my process. What they want to know about is, are they being heard? Do they have an opportunity? Are they being challenged to learn? And are they being listened to? So policies and procedures and platforms and the other tools that are in my tool belt, I absolutely lean on those to be able to to remember where I am and what we're doing. But for my customers, for employees, it's important for them to be able to say what it is that they need.
Well, I love that connection, meaning, it's necessary and absolutely that those are tools in your toolkit, but that it feels like your orientation really is around thinking about how you can create that system and that platform for the employees to help them thrive and grow.
Absolutely.
Well, so let's go there a bit more, because you also had another thing you shared in your background, which is, and you've used the word, it's just that you didn't like this word human resources. And you said it sounded too sterile. So share more about that, because I think it's also a great bridge for then talking about some of the programs that you've run and how that's influenced how you've developed those.
Right. I think part of this mindset revolves around what I like to do in my personal time. I'm a saxophone player, and the saxophone is tailor-made for jazz. And jazz is not sterile. It's not the same. And when you make mistakes, that's actually evolution. That is, it's creative license, and you're able to kind of experiment and accept. When you accept that mistakes are going to happen, you realize that that you're able to innovate with that. And so when I came out of college, I took an aptitude test or a skills test, and it was suggested that I try human resources. It was too many syllables, and I didn't know what it meant. And if you think about the movie The Matrix, and that they were actually just batteries for the computers. That's the iteration, or that's the thing that I get. And what I
Mm.
try to do is to say, I'm not about the resource that is humans and a company, using employees in order to bend the will of the society or their customers. It's about how do we do this all together, and that we're greater than the sum of our parts. We're better all together. And so my title is VP of People. Once that started to emerge, I grabbed onto that title and moved away from human resources. Although in casual conversation at a cocktail party, I'd say, yeah, I'm in HR, because
Yeah.
it's now a commonly understood term.
Yeah. Well, I brought that up because, well, Park, you and I met because when I was starting Sounding Board, you were actually one of the very first people leaders that engaged with us around coaching and developing a much broader swath of employees outside of your executive team. And it felt like, gosh, and this was, how many years ago was this, Park? Probably
10.
yeah, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. And
There was
so,
there was there was COVID in there, so
yes, and
whatever
there was
whatever
this,
whatever. It's like this.
that's right. And this is pre-COVID, right? And so it was sort of obvious to me that as a people leader, you were always really in tune with thinking about how development and growth and learning was an important part of that journey and your approach for how you were approaching managing and leading the people function. And so I'd love to hear, like, you must have had a vision for this before, that you were trying to execute against, and maybe tell us more about what that was.
Sure. What I ask managers is, imagine yourself in 5 or 7 years' time, and you've moved on perhaps from whatever company you're working in, and those that report to you have also moved on. And you're on a street, let's just pick New York City, and you're walking in different directions, and you spot an ex direct report walking the other direction, and they spot you. Would they cross the street to come and say hi, shake your hand, give you a hug, and say thank you for what you did for me, and how you supported my personal growth? You took an interest in me. That's always been something that I care about a great deal.
Mm.
If any of the people that I worked with, I want to be able to say, how are you doing? Thank you. What's going on? And so what when I have managers, like when they connect with me on that concept, they're like, yeah, I want to do that too. Now what? Then
Yeah.
I said, then now the work starts, because people, you can be the best, most dynamic manager in the world, but if your employees aren't interested in learning, they're not going to.
Yeah.
They just won't. And so you have to find you have to you have to articulate what it is that you're trying to do and invite them into the process. And then you have to be investigative about what type of learner that person is. And to try to identify, are they a visual learner? Are they an auditory learner? Are they a learn by doing? What is the way? What's the methodology? Because you don't even have to be a skilled teacher in order to be able to engage in that type of thing. You just have to be aware of it, and you can even call it out. Like, I understand that you're a visual learner, and I'm more of an audio. Like, I with jazz, I listen and I kind of extrapolate verbally, and I look in people's eyes and things like that. But we can come together and acknowledge that we learn in different ways, and we try to we acknowledge that when we're facing a little bit of a challenge. But it's figuring out how are we going to communicate? Are we interested in doing this together? And then how do we do that?
And how do you think that differs for someone that is in a manager relationship versus someone like yourself that's in a people leadership that might be thinking more on the scale of programs or, broader solutions?
So, with a manager, hopefully a manager has a small enough group of people that report to them that they are able to have one-on-one time with each one of those people and on a consistent basis. The cadence doesn't need to be every week or every day, but it needs to be at least every 2 weeks, and to be able to have an agenda and to be able to talk about what are the tactical and strategic things that we're working on together, but then on a regular cadence, talk about where are we going together and how am I helping you get to where you want to go. And so again, as we talked about a little while ago, policy or process or tips and tricks, things like that, those are in your background, and those are that I help managers to put that in their toolbox about if if it's on the sheet, and I know every 2 weeks at the end of the meeting we cordon off 7 minutes and we say, where are you? What are you doing? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What podcast? What article have you read recently? Should we read a book together? There's an opportunity for people to learn together and to try to establish curiosity as an important part of someone's, a manager helping an employee understand that curiosity will take them far.
I love that. I mean, I think oftentimes people think, the word manager, right? It means you are managing someone, but you're presenting almost another way to think about the relationship, which is I'm not managing you. We're sitting next to each other, and now we're going to learn and grow together to achieve these objectives. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. I'm not a sailor, but I do think about this, and I point this out for people to think about. A manager is like the captain of a sailboat, and if you've ever been on a sailboat or if you ever watched, when they change directions, it's somewhat tumultuous. The sails flapping like crazy and the wind is going like crazy. But then when the boat has shifted the direction it's going, the sails fill with wind and the sailboat takes off. So the manager only needs to move the steering wheel or the rudder or the tiller of the rudder, and then the employee in this metaphor is the sailboat, and they will take off. And the manager only needs to provide a little bit of guidance,
Yeah.
and then the employee takes off.
Right. Oh, I like that. It's how much pressure, right? You're not grabbing on this tight. It's about sort of setting a direction and then letting that acceleration happen because you've set the direction.
Yeah, and many of the people I've worked with in the past are very skilled professionals, and they know, um, here's our checklist. Do step one, do step two. No, I didn't like it exactly like that. I want to do it like this. If you do that, you'll never be able to let go of the reins and let the horse take off or the sailboat take off, whatever metaphor you want to use. It's very important to allow the person to do the work themselves the way that they do it. And then you need to be confident in the way that you see the way that success is progressing, and you go, I'm okay that they don't use the exact same terminology that I do, or I don't, it doesn't matter if if they're doing most of their creative work in the morning and I always do my creative work in the afternoon. At the end of the day, we get our stuff done together, and they learn better and they own it.
Could you Could you give an example, the one you just gave, right, where your one manager approach might have been, I didn't like it, you shouldn't have done this, what about this, what about that? How would that look different in your eyes if someone was allowing the space for that to happen differently?
Um, I was once on an executive team where I was hired in as the subject matter expert for performance appraisals. It
Mhm.
was, and I had a very strict methodology that I really liked, and um, I brought in a very specific set of like um, goal setting happens first. I like OKR methodology, objectives and key results. We go company level first, and we go business case, and then it was
Yeah.
very detailed the way that I laid it out. And then we would go into performance evaluations, and it should be a scale of 5. And like I had all of these, how all these tools, and what my executive team kept pushing back and kept pushing back, and I kept getting more and more frustrated because um, I was the expert. I was the one that was supposed to know how to do this.
Okay.
At one point, I realized I looked around the room and I saw that every one of them was leaning into the conversation. And I was the one that was leaning back with my arms crossed, and I was feeling defensive. And I don't know what it was, what inspired me. I realized they're here with me right now. And if I just listen and try to incorporate their ideas, we're going to have a product that they're going to be invested in, and we're going to be able to do this together. So I took a deep breath and I apologized. I said, I'm sorry for being defensive. I wanted to prove that I was good at this for you. But the fact that you're so engaged and you're asking these great questions is really exciting to me. So can we take it from the top? And I want to understand overall, what is the process? What are the elements you like? And then let's talk about the things we can refine together. And so I was able to go through that as the employee almost in that case. And the conversation that came after that and the process was the easiest goal setting and performance process that I've ever gone through because they owned it. They were able to refine it, and I just loved it.
That's amazing. I mean, one, amazing that you could have that awareness in the moment to realize like, oh, I've got to do something different here, and having being able to notice that, right? And then for you to state that so vulnerably, saying that to a group of executives, all of whom I'm sure have strong opinions and influence and expertise, couldn't have been easy.
Yeah, I think a couple of them are on the call. So they probably remember they probably remember that as well, and it was a great time. And another one is I had an employee that came from a similar background, but definitely approached things in a different way. And I encouraged her to go and think about how she wanted to roll out her program,
Mhm.
and then bring it back to me. And it was nothing that I would have done, but I honestly thought it was smarter than anything that I had ever come up with. And all I needed to do was to help her be confident in her theories, and then to kind of draw out of her, well, what do you think employees are going to react to this, and how do you think that are they going to engage? How are you going to measure that engagement? Like, and so the program was so much better than something that I would have created, and I was really uncomfortable because she was getting to a place where I wouldn't be able to support her because I didn't have expertise in that area. So it was
Yeah.
great.
I mean, it's amazing, Park, what you can drive in terms of ownership and engagement and motivation when people get the opportunity to bring their own ideas to life and are really engaged and felt like they had that opportunity to do that. Funny story for you. I am trying a similar tactic with my children. So, normally at home, it's mom pointing out, like, hey, did you notice this toy shouldn't be here and this and that? And just this morning, I had this conversation with them and I said, guys, I don't think I'm the one that should be pointing these things out and noticing them. What if we all tried to notice what needed to be done? And then took the ownership to do that. And the funniest response I got from my daughter was like, she got excited about that. And you know what her reasoning was? She said, well, mom, I think I like that because it's so much, I'm so much more motivated to clean up when you're not the one telling me to clean up, and it was such a basic idea that, it just struck me again as you were telling the story.
I love that. And anyone that shies away from the parallels of the human condition and treating humans like humans as opposed to, oh, they're just children or they're just much older people.
Yeah.
If you just recognize that there is a base level of humanity in the whole thing, that's remarkable. Thank you for sharing.
Well, I don't want to forget though, how you then sort of extrapolated that to a bigger scale and how you bring that same sort of thinking to some of the programs or initiatives that you've done. And, I know you've done some, especially that you've been really proud of the impact that they've had. So maybe share a little bit about that.
Sure. So it was during COVID, and the company that I was working for at the time, we had a goal of helping managers be better people leaders. And one thing that I started to realize was I needed to have a methodology where different types of learners could learn the way that they wanted to learn, and that those that were more motivated to do some self-learning had an opportunity, a way to go and get as much training as they could, as they could or they wanted to. So I created a methodology and I rebranded our learning program to have three different components to it. One was to be able to provide an opportunity for self-guided learning. And then we had another program specifically designed for manager learning.
Mm.
And then the third is setting learning as part of our goals. And that last part was our management articulating that it was expected that people find a way to learn and to grow and to apply some sort of ability to evolve and to innovate into their careers. So it was written as an expectation. And so that's very freeing when I'm responsible for this spreadsheet and I'm responsible for this deliverable. I'm also responsible to myself to learn so that I can create. So that was something that was very important. So self-guided learning, we identified, we actually used Udemy for Business. And so we created, we gave everyone an account. We were able to go and say, if you're this type of employee, here are the 4 trainings that we want you to do this month, this quarter, whatever it is. If you're a manager, here are the 10 courses that over a period of time you need to watch. And we're going to bring those up in manager meetings. And so we had curriculum that we designed. So for self-learning, and it wasn't required, but at the same time, it was very important that people got to have that. For manager learning, we were able to create both new manager training, but then also it started during COVID. It was every week we checked in with managers, but then we switched it to every month. And what we did was we created a little bit of a topic where we would present something that was topical for us, for the company. But then we would then often break off and allow managers to go into groups, and then we would have sharebacks, so that managers, it wasn't just us pontificating about a theory in people that we felt was important. We were giving it back to managers to have a discussion, and then they shared what was interesting, and other managers took that in a lot better. What that really did was, in every company I've ever worked for, I have had managers that have tons and tons of experience, and
Yeah.
I have managers that have almost none.
Yeah.
And they're both kind of frustrated and dissatisfied with the content. But
Yes.
if you can deputize those that are at the top with all the experience, and you go, hey, here's a bit of kudos. You're really good at this. I need you to help me. And even if you have a topic that you'd like to share, I would be all for it. I get tired of hearing my voice. Everyone else does too. So if you could talk, that'd be awesome. And then with those that are new, it's like, hey, can I spend a little bit more time with you and learn, what do you like to do? How do you like to do it? How did you become a manager? Why did you become a manager? Do you want to still be a manager? There are all these questions you can ask to find out what their mindset is, so that they can start to grow their manager career. And then the piece of the piece de resistance is getting those high level folks and the lower level folks in some sort of partnership agreement, because there's always a reciprocity of new energy, new ideas with experience and kind of the world from a 10,000 foot view. So and then the last is just that goal setting, is making sure that you're articulating in writing that you have an expectation and that we're committing to it.
Well, I want to come back to two of those things, but I feel like we have to highlight this idea of how you brought together managers at different levels and actually made that work, because that is something we hear so often as we engage with clients. Whether it's through acquisition, just through hiring, some people are promoted from within, some are hired externally. That's a universal challenge, I think, across many companies, where they often think they have to solve it by having different experiences for those managers. And you've sort of taken that and said, no, there's actually a learning opportunity in the fact that they are at different levels and experiences.
Yeah.
How did you find that the folks that, at those different levels, did you find that really came true? Like, any examples of how that, imbalance maybe got further balanced, or why that was magical or important?
Remember when I told the story about me at the executive team and I was being defensive,
Yeah,
and then I took a deep breath?
yeah,
That epiphany, that moment, now allowed me, when I have one manager in particular constantly said, these manager meetings are a waste of my time. I know all this stuff and I don't see value in it. And as we went from in person to Zoom,
yeah.
that person would that like wasn't on mute and would go, ah, and they would turn their camera off, which if I was presenting, or my partner, my coworker was presenting, that would throw us off. It didn't feel
Yeah.
good, didn't sound good. So I invited that person. I did it live, which was helpful, and I just said, it's very clear that you're dissatisfied with the content of what we're trying to do, with the concept and the content and the direction we're going. If you were me, what would you do? Because if I can't provide value to you, I don't want you in those meetings.
Mm,
I don't want to waste your time. And so that person was a little bit taken aback, because I don't know if they were so self-aware that they knew that they were rolling their eyes and turning their camera off.
yeah.
I thought maybe they thought that that was very, invisible, but it was very visible. So what was great was we had a live conversation, and I said, look, if you're willing to participate, I'll deputize you. You can have a regular segment of, like, you're experienced. And they did that a couple of times, and then they realized there is space for me here, and I do have a voice, and I do have examples of things that I can share in small group and in large group. And
Mm,
so that was one example of something I was able to do. It's never easy to confront someone. That's conflict, and at some level, everyone is conflict averse. But when you take a deep breath and you say, I'm not going to be defensive about this. I'm going to be curious about where you're coming from, because I think if I can if I can ingest what you're giving me, I'm going to be better for it.
yeah, and it's actually a very common practice in coaching, right? Which is, one, naming what's happening, but being able to name it neutrally. And if you can do that, what happens is, one, you might kind of put that person at attention that, hey, I'm sort of noticing these things. But if you can do it neutrally, there is an invitation for them then to almost rethink, versus if you don't, that's where, lean back, right? Defensive positioning happens.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Park, I didn't even get to ask about some of your, advice for others and some of the work that you've done on skills, which leads me to think I'm just going to have you come back and speak with folks again. But we have actually hit the end of our stream. And so maybe 10 seconds, any parting words for the folks on the line?
Sure. First off, happy holidays, and I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season. Um, Make sure in this time that you reflect back and you say thank you to your partners and those your thought leaders and thought partners, because if you give them some good feels through this time, next year at the beginning you're going to say, you know what, last year was great. Why don't we do something even better this next year? Because people that feel like you value their opinion and their partnership are more willing to partner and to maybe to work a little bit harder with you to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
Such wise words. And also, I think that notion of gratitude such a relevant one for us as we're in the season that we are. And so, Park, thank you so much again for coming on. It's always a pleasure having a conversation with you, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Bye.
See you soon.